Pushing Up Roses.
Yeah. Yes.
Before we record,
Yes.
we have breaking news
We do.
in the world of the world. This has
Oh my
nothing to do with
God.
adventure games, so this is breaking news.
Tell me.
Something horrible has happened.
Oh my God. What is it? I can't even come up with like a clever scenario. Just tell me. What is it?
Are you sitting down?
I am sitting down. I'm sitting
got
down
your-
and I'm
You
drawing
s-
trees.
You strapped in? Do you got your seatbelt on?
I am. I can put a ribbon over my lap.
Yeah, you got your helmet?
Dude, I don't wear a helmet. I'm from Chicago.
You got your cape?
Yes, I always have my cape.
Okay. Here's the
That'll
news.
help.
I know it's gonna be hard to record after this, but
Oh, God.
I'm gonna say it, and then we'll start the episode, and then we're just gonna try to put it out of our heads.
My anxiety is so
Okay.
high.
It should be. All right.
Great.
The Golden Bachelor Jerry Turner is getting a divorce from Teresa.
No! We were rooting for him. We were all rooting for him.
I bet what I bet it is I bet like she just couldn't stand the fact that he cried every single day. And she was just like, God, I thought it was just for the show.
Right.
But this man does not stop crying
Oh,
ever.
no. Like that, yeah, that would bother me. I'd be like, whoa, why? If my partner was just crying all the time, I'm like, what do we need to do to like solve this? What's going on?
That's what I thought when I was watching The Golden Bachelor. It's like, how do we stop this? How do we stop this man from the crying? Because it seems to be most of what he can do with his face.
Yeah, shouldn't he be not crying because he found like the love of his life? Like, aren't we beyond the sad?
No,
I'm not trying to shame anyone, by the way. For crying is good. That's a good thing. But
first he was crying because his wife died. Then he was crying because the show was stressful. Then he was crying because he was in love. Then he was crying because he was in love with two people. Then he was crying because he was happy. And it's like, dude, there is a time where you can stop crying.
No, every emotion is crying for him. You're bored, just start crying. You're good.
And now he's getting divorced. So this guy's just
he's gonna cry for the rest of his life.
Hey everybody, welcome to
the Bachelor Reviews. I mean, Save Your Game.
Welcome to Save Your Game. We're a podcast about narrative games, like adventure games usually, pretty much that.
And Stardew Valley.
I'm Matt Allcamp.
You are?
Yeah, that's me.
I just learned your name today. Amazing. And I am Pushing Up Roses. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you took the news well about The Bachelor. I hope you're not all shaken because we're just going to start talking about a pretty heavy game. So we're starting with heavy news, hard news, and then we're going to go, what are we talking about today? Actually, first of all, we should talk about what we've been playing. Totally forgot about that segment.
First, wait, before that, hold on.
Before that.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Matt.
That's right. Pushing Up Roses. You're 22.
I'm 22. You got it, Dad. How did you know? I don't share my age very often because, women doesn't share her age, does she? Yes, I look great, and I got my I haven't been playing anything because I got my kneecap tattooed and I'm dying.
Is that
literally dying?
For every year, do you get one giant tattoo that makes you want to die? Pretty
much. But listen. This was my birthday tattoo. This is what I did for my birthday. And I had this really awkward area on my leg. It was like in between my knee, on the side of my knee. And I'm like, for some reason,
we all have that. Hold on.
We all have that awkward area.
We all have. You said I have an awkward area between my knee and my. We all have that area.
It's not what I meant. I meant not tattooed, like a blank space.
Yeah. All right.
Oh dear. So I have this blank space, and I did it to myself in the email. I said, quote, I don't mind if it goes on the kneecap. Why'd I do that? Why'd I do that? Why did I do that?
Mm,
So
mm,
oh man, I kid you not. This is the worst tattoo I ever sat for. It was my worst sit. My artist had to have a death grip on me. I was shaking. Um, the kneecap is just bone. It's just
right.
bone. And so that's so painful. And by the end, like the outline I sat pretty well for. And then by the end, I was making noises to try to help. That does help, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that, but if you are in pain and you kind of like grunt or yell, it gives you like a little bit of energy. It helps. Maybe don't do that though at the tattoo
Hmm.
parlor. You might scare people. I don't know. By the end, it was very bad, and I almost threw up.
So that, in essence, is like both an adventure and a game.
Yeah.
The puzzle being, how do I not scream and throw up, I guess.
Right? I
Yeah.
did not throw up. I don't think I cried. Somebody made a good point about crying, and I'm going to share it with you guys. Is crying different than like shedding a tear? So for example, if I tweeze my eyebrows, right? There's a sensation there that makes a tear, like it makes my eyes water. It makes a tear come down. It's a weird sensation. That's kind of what happened. Is that crying? I don't know. I don't think it is.
Huh. No, because you can definitely cry without tears.
You can?
Yes, you can definitely be crying and then not end up shedding tears, right? It can
Okay.
just be like the right?
I've never been able to do that, but
Yeah.
yeah, sure. But that's kind of what happened. Is tears were, a tear came out of my eye. I felt bad, and then I thought I was gonna throw up. And I kid you
Mhm.
not, the movie that they were playing, because if that some white guy is picking these movies to show at the parlor, was fucking Pulp Fiction. I, I'm so good thing there's no scene where somebody gets stabbed really hard with a needle. Am I right? Like I had to watch the entirety of Pulp Fiction while
Oh my
being
god.
in the worst tattoo pain of my entire life.
That I have to tell you something.
Okay.
So I'm in school for anthropology right now, and I have been looking for anthropology and archaeology podcasts to listen to because I
Okay.
feel like oftentimes if I listen to a podcast on a subject, uh, even if it's out of my depth or even if it's a little boring, like the osmosis, right, helps
Yeah.
me sort of absorb the subject a little better and feel like maybe I know some stuff about it that is, some insider stuff, right? Stuff that they
Yeah.
wouldn't teach you in school and stuff that, maybe is even beyond what I've learned so far, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was listening to this anthropology podcast, and up till this point, it had been great, right?
Okay.
Because anthropologists are generally pretty smart, pretty socially conscious people,
Yeah.
pretty human forward type folks. And
Yeah.
there was this episode where this guy was giving a lecture on science, like or media literacy in science,
Okay.
and he was talking about how to edit videos, how to plan a script, how to go off script when you're in front of a crowd, that sort of thing. It was really
Yeah.
interesting, but he kept kind of sneaking in these things. And at one point,
Okay.
he said, "So right now I'm using a Shure M 57, like a Rogan mic." And I was like, "Oh, huh." That's
Okay.
that's a little
What?
weird. Okay,
That's a
yeah,
little
okay.
weird.
That's
Yeah.
just okay. He's just referencing something cultural, right? Like everyone knows Joe Rogan, so okay, fine. That doesn't
Oh
necessarily mean
no.
he's like a Rogan guy. And then later, he's referencing something he says during a speech. He's like, and it's something that all the great comics do.
No. No. No.
My favorites are Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. I know both of
No.
those. He says I know both those some have some controversy. Whatever, I don't care. And then later he's talking about
Fuck.
editing film, and he's like, uh you know what, even if you're just doing like a science lecture, you want to look at the greats of filmmaking. My favorite director is Quentin Tarantino.
Oh
and
my
and he
god.
says, like, the movie Inglorious Bastard, I think it is the greatest film ever made. And I'm just like,
There's a lot of red flags going on here. Like, look,
holy
look.
cow, this man could not be hitting the exact center of his demographic better
I mean, all he
than
had to say was like, and also, I like everything that J.K. Rowling has ever done. You know,
You know, or yeah,
Not Harry Potter's singularity, just J.K. Rowling. I
if
really
I'd
like her.
kept if I'd kept listening, so it was actually the thing that made me turn it off was he spent like a half hour bragging about how good of a speech he did at his sister's wedding and how the people at the
What?
wedding were congratulating him more than they were congratulating the couple. And I was like, all
What?
right, I can't do this anymore. But I
That
bet
is
if I
the
listened to the
weirdest
end,
thing.
I bet if I listened to the end, at some point he would have started talking about women gatekeeping sex and how nobody likes a nice guy.
Like, look, man, look. I understand. We all have our problematic faves. We all have them, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But when everything is like, it just like spiraling out of control,
When
you're like,
they're
oh, you're
all
that kind of person.
when they're all your problematic, when every fave of yours is problematic.
Like, what happened here, my man? Like,
Yeah, it was like a real, you know what? It was like an anthropology experience for me. It was like I was on an archaeological dig and I was just discovering more and more about this man's culture. The farther, the more layers down I went, and
oh
eventually it was like,
no.
okay, this man is a primitive.
Great. Yeah, I am not a Tarantino fan. But I do
Plus,
love Uma
yeah,
Thurman, so that's a problem for me. I really love her, and she's so beautiful in Pulp Fiction, and I like the corny way that John Travolta speaks in that film.
yeah,
He's just everything that comes out of his mouth is like inflected very cornily.
yeah. I'll say
Um,
this. I am a middle-aged white man, so I do like Quentin Tarantino, but I think it is a massive, like, shining, like, twinkling red flag if somebody says that he is the best filmmaker that's ever lived, and
that's ever
any
lived.
if they say any Tarantino movie is the best movie ever made, it's like, not only do I know that you've watched maybe 3 movies off of the AFI's greatest films of all time list,
Yeah,
uh, also, I know that you probably have a really skewed view towards humanity.
yeah. Oh no. Also, how can he say that when David Lynch exists? He's the best. And I'm
Okay,
gonna bring him
so
up today, maybe a little later, because of what we're talking about today.
oh,
Anyway,
shit.
that was my segment for what we've been playing. Is just I got my kneecap tattooed. It was terrible. It
Mm.
was the worst pain I've ever experienced. I'm not. It was so bad. I'm not getting another leg tattoo. I'm not even joking.
It's
And
done.
it's
This is
done.
what your legs look like now
Yeah, this
forever.
is it. This is it. And I had to watch Pulp Fiction, not by choice. It sucked. I had to watch major violence while
Mm,
my bone was getting stabbed. And that's what I did this week.
amazing.
Matt, what have you been? Hopefully you have played something.
You know, actually, I've played so much this week.
Damn.
This this April has been utterly wild for game releases, and
Yeah.
I don't know what's in the digital ether at this moment that is making this happen. But there are so
Yeah.
many good adventure games that are coming out right now.
That's true. I did notice that. It seems like everything has been ramping up so much. And even trailers. Like even because
Right?
I'm there's like now a hashtag for like point and click Friday or Adventure Game Friday, and I
Oh,
follow that.
cool.
And it's like, geez, there's a lot of stuff coming out. Like a lot.
Both games I'm going to be bringing up were released this month, which is crazy. And they're not even all of the new releases I've played so far, but I got to dole these out
Yeah.
because I have so many. But the first one that I played that I'm going to talk about is Botany Manor.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I remember
Mhm.
way back in the day when we started this podcast, Next Fest was happening, and that was
Mhm.
one of the demos was Botany
Y-
Manor.
Yeah, listeners might remember that, and I was really enamored with Botany Manor. Did you play that one?
Did I start? No, I didn't because you intimidated me with it.
Oh no. Okay.
Because you were saying, I remember this. You were saying something about the mechanic of like you mix these things to make this thing to get this flower, and you it's like research heavy. Or quote, put that in quotes. Research heavy in quotes.
So all right, so it's got there's a couple elements to this game, but
Yeah,
you're walking around this mansion. with these beautiful grounds, like garden surrounding it. I think your name is Arabella Green, and
That's a pretty name.
you're picking up notes and letters and stuff and reading about this woman's story. Like you're piecing it together from letters, like in a walking simulator.
Yeah.
She's a botanist who, or she's a aspiring botanist who keeps getting shut out of the world. This takes place in the late 1800s, and she
Okay.
keeps getting shut out of the world of botany because it is reserved for men.
Right.
And you discover from these letters that either she's being shut out or her work is being stolen by men. There's a lot on that front.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you find a seed, and then amongst all these letters about that, like, reveal to you details about your life, you also find letters that give you hints as to her research into these plants. You'll find a letter that's like a chart of different regions of the world and what temperatures they are in certain seasons, right? And then on another thing, you'll find a book that lists a bunch of flowers
Right.
and what regions they're in. And then you'll find a letter about this rare flower blooming and a hint as to what season it was in, right?
Okay.
So then you'll put them together and you'll go, okay, so this flower only blooms at this season in this region, which is this temperature. So you might take that flower, put it in a pot, put soil in it, water it,
Mhm.
and then put it by, say, an air vent that you set to that exact temperature, and then the flower
Oh.
blooms.
Oh, that's kind of nice and relaxing sounding.
It is so relaxing. So also, let me say the art style of this game is very much like The Witness. It's very bright colors. It's
Okay.
these
I actually wasn't expecting you to say that. I for some reason I was thinking like I was almost comparing it to some of the stuff from the game Strange Horticulture, which is
okay.
muted plant like tones, right? Like so you've got these unified colors of greens and browns and neutrals and stuff like. So I actually wasn't expecting you to say I mean it makes sense. It's flowers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense now, but in my mind I was
I
just
mean,
imagining this very morbid, muted thing.
so I did think about Strange Horticulture as I was playing, but yeah, it looks very much like The Witness. Like it's 3D and it's
Yeah.
like these incredibly bright colors and this sort of like 3D models that like they don't look realistic, but they kind of I don't know how you would I don't know how you would describe it. It's just like
I understand what you mean.
dreamlike and bucolic and just very
Yeah.
relaxing and very beautiful. And so again, you're walking around this beautiful manor and it's beautiful gardens, and you're just again solving these little puzzles to figure out
Mhm.
how to make these flowers grow. So this game, again, incredibly relaxing, but
Mhm.
I was so in love with these puzzles that
Aw.
I just swallowed this game up. If this game had 100 more flowers,
Okay.
I would have been so happy. I finished this game in like 2 days.
That's
I just
awesome.
tore through it. It took me about 4 to 5 hours to beat,
Uh-huh.
but it blew me away.
That's
The sound
great to hear.
this
It looks very relaxing.
mhm.
Yeah, it is very bright colors. It's very I don't wanna call it a casual game experience because I feel there are negative connotations to when you say casual for some reason.
Right.
But it does feel like something that you could play. I mean, you got obviously addicted to it because that's what we do. We binge
That's us.
adventure
Yeah.
games. That's just us. I don't know if that's you, the viewer, but that's us. It does look like something you can pick up after a little bit.
I think I would not call this a casual game,
Okay,
but I do think it has that sort of, yeah, like if you're having a bad day, you could throw this game on, play for
it's
a
like
little
good
bit and then turn it
vibes.
off. Um the only thing, there's a couple things there's a couple little negatives about it. Number one, you're relying so much on papers that you pick up and like documents and stuff,
Okay,
and they all get logged in this book that you're keeping. That's your goal. You're writing a book about these flowers
okay,
and how to grow them.
okay.
And oh my god, roses, if I could tell the feeling of getting it right and one of the roses blooming, and then sometimes like not rose, flower blooming, and then one
Hmm.
of those flowers just like taking over the room that you're in
Uh
is
huh.
such an amazing feeling. Every
Aww.
single time it like gave me goosebumps. But you can't pull up any of the documents from the menu. So if you
Okay.
find two related documents that are like 5 rooms away and
Mhm.
you want to reference one of them, you got to run 5 rooms away to find that document and pick it up.
Okay. So you're saying there's backtracking.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of backtracking, and the one time that like there was one day I played it for like played it for like a day, and then I put it down. Then I played it another day, and that break was actually difficult because I was
Okay.
like, oh, now I have to read all the notes again, and now I have to run around and find them. It took me like
Okay.
20 minutes to reread all the notes. So maybe that would just be solved by if now that you listeners know this and you roses know this, if you just take notes on a piece of paper as you're going, that would probably solve the whole thing.
Okay. That's good to know.
I'll also say it has a problem early on where you're only working on one flower, so you always know that every document is a hint towards the flower that you are currently working on.
Okay.
And that can be frustrating because it's like, okay, well, now I know exactly how to. I just need the numbers or what. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
But later on, there comes points where you're working on 3 or 4 different flowers at the same time, and that
Yeah.
gets a lot better. Like, that's a lot more challenging because you're like, okay, I have to actually logic this out.
Yeah.
What flowers relate to what? I have to find a reference to this flower name and
Got
when
it.
it bloomed rather than just being like, okay, all these notes are about wind, so I guess this one needs wind, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, anyway, that's Botany Manor. Highly suggest checking it out. It is on Game Pass right now, so if you have Xbox Game Pass,
Oh, nice.
you already have this game.
So yeah, yeah, play it then.
Yeah, yeah.
Play it. Make flowers.
This next one I'll try to be really short because I know I just went really long about that one. I've still been playing The Legend of Skye. I mentioned that
Mhm.
last episode.
Yeah, yeah, the kinda adventure-y, quest for glory-y.
I would say this game is actually very, very much like Monkey Island 2,
Okay,
mixed with like a little bit of Simon the Sorcerer.
fair.
Like I said last week, you're a druid on a mission to save the world, or save the forest, I guess, and thus the world. Is that easy? Um, so you're traveling through this like medieval village, and there's a lot of kind of like anachronistic stuff, and silly stuff, which reminds me of Simon the Sorcerer. But the puzzles are very. We talked a couple weeks ago about the Adventures of the Black Hawk and how it was trying to be like a new age LucasArts game
Right.
and the ways that it sort of fell short.
Yeah.
I think Legend of Skye hits the nail right on the head. It is clever and cute, and the
Aw.
puzzles are hard. It's got that thing that a lot of modern point and click game adventures lose, which is you kind of know what you kind of know to solve this puzzle you need an object kind of like this, and once you finally find that object, once you convince a character to give you that object, or
Mhm.
you find the right key to open the cage where the object is in, or whatever dumb thing, right?
Yeah.
uh you have the object, okay, you just go solve the puzzle, the end.
Yeah.
A thing that LucasArts games had that this has is another challenge will pop up once you have the right object.
Okay.
And sometimes yet another one will. So you're like, okay, I need a wrench to open this thing. And then you get it, and the wrench, like, it's like, okay, the wrench doesn't quite reach. So then you
Right.
need a thing to use on the wrench so it can reach the nut. And then it's like, okay, but now that I'm using this thing with the wrench with the nut, now I don't have enough strength. So now I need a third thing. So like you every time that you're like, oh, I got it, it's like, oh wait, no, it's more complicated than I thought.
Yeah. It's
That was
like
the
the
thing.
ultimate fetch quest. It's like gotta do things to start a fetch quest.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like that was a thing about the LucasArts games that was so good is you'd be like, oh, obviously what I need to do is this. And then
Yeah.
when you try to do it, somehow it would fail.
Yeah.
Um, and Legend of Skye has that in spades, so you really have to think hard about the puzzles, and the puzzles are really difficult.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little moon logic-y, some of them are a little frustrating, like it's like you have a knife in your inventory and you're like, and they're like, I can't open this thing, and you're like, okay, so just use the knife and cut it, and she's like,
Yeah.
nope, that doesn't work. And it's like, why?
Why?
Number one, you didn't tell me why it worked. Number two, why wouldn't it work,
I
dude?
do enjoy games that actually tell you why it's
Yeah.
not gonna work. Actually, the game we're
Mhm.
covering today does do that,
Very
for a
good
lot
at
of
that.
things. Yeah, it's like it doesn't work because it's not strong enough. It's not strong enough to work
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yes, very good at anticipate the game we're going to talk about today. Very good at anticipating your actions. Legend of Skye does that sometimes, but oftentimes not. It's just like she's like,
It's
I
just the
can't reach it.
Discworld of it all. Like, that doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. She's like, you go to grab something. She's like, I can't reach it, and you're just like, well, I have a long stick in my inventory, so use stick on the thing. And she's like, that won't work. It's like, why?
Why? Yeah, tell me why. I want to know why it won't. You know what, adventure game devs? We love to know why these
Tell
things
me
won't work.
exactly why, so then I can, yeah. And usually that can be a hint towards solving the puzzle. Like,
Yeah,
oh no,
definitely.
this I tried to get it with the stick, but it just went around the stick. I need
Right.
something that'll grab it more firmly. Like then I'm like,
Right.
okay, I need something that'll grab it firmly. But like, no, it doesn't have any of that. So,
Oh no!
Legend of Skye, very good, very LucasArtsy, but also LucasArtsy in the way that the puzzles can be kind of frustrating sometimes. I've had to use the walkthrough maybe like 2 or 3 times.
That's not too bad.
In a way that I never had to use the walkthrough either for Botany Manor or the game that we're going to be talking about today.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm just trying to prove I'm no scrub, Roses. I'm just trying to tell these people, look,
Well, we don't want no scrubs.
I just don't
So
run to walkthroughs at the drop of a hat.
no, of course
So,
not.
yeah.
Of course not. We're young. Our brains are sponges. We're 22 years old, and we don't need walkthroughs because we're very imaginative people.
Again, no shade if you use walkthroughs and it makes your experience better.
Scrub.
I'm just a little bit smarter than you, I think. Maybe a little. No, just
Okay.
kidding. No, just kidding. But yeah, so Legend of Skye. So the games, yeah, that I played this week, Botany Manor and Legend of Skye. That's Skye.
Uh, so yeah, you have 3 suggestions. You can get a kneecap tattoo, play Legend of Skye, or play Botany Manor. Tell us which one you did.
Yeah, leave us a comment. Which one did you do? Also, I'm gonna say this later this month. I think right around the time this episode releases, that like what was it, claymation point and click game, Harold Halibut. Have you seen this?
No.
It
I
is
only
like
know of like a couple claymated games, and those are the Armacrog and Neverhood. Those are the only claymated games I've ever seen.
I have not played any sort of demo or anything, so I can't guarantee this game's going to be good, but it looks goddamn beautiful. It's called Harold Halibut, and
I'll look it up.
it's one I'm really excited for. Okay, so anyway,
Nice.
April rules. I'll tell you guys all about another game that came out in April that, again, just fucking rules next week. But this week, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about The Last Door, both seasons, season 1 and season 2, from respectively 2013, and the last episode was released in 2016,
Wow.
rather.
We talked about these a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And
because that's what we were playing, remember? Like, that's kind of like in the genre of like, oh, what have you been playing? Well, I picked up this because it was recommended to me by you guys.
Yeah, this was recommended by listeners. So, hey, guys, again, feel free to keep recommending us stuff.
Yeah, we do. I actually do listen. Literally all of my Murder, She Wrote episodes are from suggestions. They're from comments.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, it's by the Game Kitchen, and we're gonna be doing a deep dive into it today.
I can't wait. What a ride that game was.
Oh my god. You are not wrong.
I am not wrong. That's the game I played out of order. It's okay, guys. I know what I'm doing. It's fine. I have righted the situation and played it in order.
I'm glad that you know what you're doing, because this game, there's so many things about this game that baffled me. So
it's a rough one.
Hopefully you can put me on track. Let's talk about The Last Door.
Hey everybody, we're back. Pushing Up Roses here with my co-host Matt Aucamp. How was your break, Matt?
It was good. I drank a lot of water. So there's
Good.
definitely going to need to be a pee break because there's a lot to talk about with these games. I'm
Oh,
not going to
I
get
went and played
through
the
it.
game during our break. That's what I did during the break. I went and played it. It was a long
I was
break.
going to ask. I was going to ask what took so long. I'm just saying, yeah, our discussion is going to outlast my bladder for sure.
That is fine. We allow that here at the Save Your Game podcast. We respect bodily function, and just raise your hand, and I won't see it, but raise your hand, and I will let you go to the bathroom.
Okay, thank you.
You might be. I mean, this is a horror
Thank you,
game.
Miss Roses.
You might be so scared you might have to pee.
Has that ever happened to you in real life?
Like one time.
Oh my
Like
god,
one
really?
time. Yep. I didn't
Like
like pee my pants or anything, but it gave me like I was so scared. It gave me the sensation. Yeah.
I have never either laughed so hard I felt like I needed to pee, nor have I gotten so scared I needed to pee, and I kind of thought both were myths.
No, it really does happen. Like a lot of people, like the laughing thing especially. Like I've definitely have, and I will of course not name any names. We're not here to embarrass people, but it's actually very normal
Wait,
and
meaning
does happen.
you have made somebody laugh to the point where they pissed.
Not me, but like I've been in a group where we're just laughing at something.
And
Like
somebody's like,
like
"Ah!
yeah.
Ah! Up! Up!"
Yeah, it's exactly what happens.
They just like make a weird face like a baby who's like shitting. And like they just like the baby like goes and stands behind the couch and you're like, "What do you do?" Oh,
Oh, okay.
you're
No,
shitting in your diaper right now.
it's not like uncommon that happens. Anxiety is another one. Like for me, I have a lot of like anxiety, and that will make me
Mhm.
go to the bathroom. I don't know why. I don't know why it happens. Peeing is weird, and I don't know
I
why this is the segue into
I mean,
into the last door.
getting ready for like a comedy show often would move my bowels in ways
Yeah, yeah.
that they don't otherwise. But
Nerves, man. Nervousness does that. And there's some like startle scares in this game that kind
mm,
of you could call there's some jump scares. I was more startled. I'll say that.
okay.
But I think there are some that we could define as jump scares, and man, that'll get your poop going, man. Like
Whoa. Um yeah, I mean, yeah, jump scares don't do that for me, but uh whatever you like, I guess, Roses. No,
I'm just saying, it startles your nerves, it startles your you know what? Shut up. Didn't ask you.
yeah, no, I think there were a lot more jump scares in the first game than the second game. At least that was my
Yeah.
experience.
Or we just got used to it. But I think I lean towards agreeing that there were more. I couldn't
So,
tell because at some point when you're playing a horror game for, a few hours, you do get a little desensitized
and
to
you do have to
and
piss.
what?
And you have to piss.
And you have to piss, yeah.
It's just that's the way bladders work over time. You're gonna have to piss eventually. And
Eventually.
maybe you'll just always assume it was the last thing that happened to you that made you piss. It's like hiccup
It was a jump
cures.
scare. Yeah, it was a jump scare in Last Door, and that's the last thing that made me go to the bathroom.
Like hiccup cures, right? Like your
Yeah.
hiccups are going to go away. And you're
Yeah.
just gonna be like, whatever the last thing you did, you're gonna be like, oh, that did it.
That
But
did
it's like,
it.
no, it's just
Yeah. I
they
pet my
just went.
cat and that cured my hiccup.
But it's like that's the way it is with this. Like,
Yeah.
I have to piss. It must have been this.
Or it could be because you drank a gallon of water, like Matt did. He's very hydrated.
I'm very hydrated.
Special
That
boy,
that's
extraordinary boy, unicorn boy, Matt Aucamp, very
unicorn
hydrated.
boy. That's how you get to
Unicorn boy.
be so special. Is you
That's
gotta
like
drink a
a
lot of
major
water.
special. Yeah.
Any of you guys out there want to be special, just stay hydrated.
Just stay hydrated. Doesn't take much. My bar is so low. Anyway, let's get into the last door. Now that you've been prompted by these startle scares and jump scares, and
Mhm.
maybe
Boo!
don't drink ah. Matt, please, that doesn't work over sound. That only
Uh,
works in person. It
Sorry.
actually does. I am more scared by the people in my life than like jump scares in media. So last door, last
Just like,
door.
stop coming into my house.
Honestly, that's one of my like fears. We should talk about fears sometime that spark from video games. I think that would be an interesting topic as well.
Interesting,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, let's jump into this. So this game was kickstarted in 20, I don't know why I keep saying on the day, the first day of 2013. No, it was kickstarted on 2013 and had a lot of backers and a lot of hype, and it is a game that is set in 2 seasons that comes out in chapters. So in season 1, that was its own game, had 4 chapters that I
Hmm.
believe came out over periods of time. And then the last chapter that came out was in 2016. So this is a game that developed episodically from 2013 to 2016, fully crowdfunded by Kickstarter. It is described as a Lovecraftian game,
Okay.
inspired by him and Edgar Allan Poe, but I think it has a lot of I think it actually has a lot of horror inspirations that we'll talk about.
And we talked last time when we brought up this game, the idea of calling things Lovecraftian when they're just kind of
Right.
spooky. But after playing season 2, this game
Yeah.
is very, very Lovecraftian.
Yes. And I will bring up some of the other inspirations that I found
Sure.
also in the game that are not going to be H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe, because works of art, they don't just have one inspiration. It's always a combination of a million things, whether you know it or not. Some of
Right.
those things can be subconscious. So I'm going to try to just give you guys a little bit of a plot synopsis here. And I had to read the Wikipedia to get my thoughts correct, because if I just try to explain it, I'm just going to go off. I'm going to be like, it's not going to be great. So there's a group of 4 friends, and they have this in college. They have created this secret society. It's very Dead Poet Society, but not innocent like Dead Poet Society. It's not about poetry. It is about philosophy. They create a philosophical group where they're interested in tapping into the unknown, tapping in to this other side, which they call the veil. It's like this supernatural setting, territory called the veil. And throughout their time in college, they try different things to try to reach the veil. One of the characters tries creating a serum that can maybe like hallucinate them into getting there.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
such
yeah.
a unique such a unique idea is kids try drugs in college.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's drugs. Another way they tried to do it was to instill what they call primal fear into the person, and that will help them to get to the other side. If you can
So
instill primal fear, you will get
right?
to the veil, which I'm like, what? Okay,
One of
all
the
right.
things I think I understood by the end of the game is that the serum was meant to, like, the goal of the serum was to instill primal fear.
Okay.
They were using the serum to instill primal fear. Does that sound right to you?
I was thinking that too, but at the end I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if because there was a doctor in this, or somebody who wanted to be a doctor. So this group of young boys, they had different majors. One was philosophy major, one was more of a literature type of a person. They all
Hmm.
had like these different roles in their group. So one of them, who went the more like medical route, he made that serum, and I wasn't sure if there was another character who wanted to do the fear thing. But you could be right. The serum could induce like such hallucinations that it instills fear, and that fear. And this is not a unique idea. I like this idea. I like this
Hmm.
concept of fear pushing you almost into another dimension.
Right.
And that's what they wanted to do. That was their goal. And over time, something went wrong. One of the characters was so traumatized that he developed amnesia and couldn't remember any of the events that happened during his time when he was with this group trying to get into this veil.
And it'll
Uh,
be a spoiler to say what character that is, but I don't think, if we're not spoiling who the character is, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that that character ended up being the person who sparked the whole, like,
right.
that ended up, we find out that that is the founder of this society. That
Right.
is the
That was
person
supposed
who
to be the
set
twist.
them. Yeah, that's the person who set them down this path to begin with. And
Yeah.
you learn about the amnesia about 10 minutes before you learn about this person being the founder, so I don't think one spoils the
Right.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think you do seem to I think you can determine that he has amnesia earlier or something happened to him because in the first season we are trying the whole point is we're trying to figure out what happened here. We're
Mhm.
trying to almost look at the shadows of our former pasts, right? And
Right.
figure out what this group of
We're
friends did in
in the
college.
first in the first season, we're a guy named Jeremiah Devitt or
Wait,
DeVitt.
before we talk about Jeremiah Devitt,
Yeah.
the game actually starts with a
Okay.
man named Anthony Beechworth.
Oh,
And
right.
so this is how you start
Every
the game.
chapter has a
Yeah.
cold open that
Yes.
is
It's a
chilling.
it's chilling. You play a different character each time and you are playing the cold open. It is interactive, I should
Mm,
say. And
mhm.
at the very beginning of the game, you're named Anthony Beechworth, and you are writing to your friend Jeremiah Devitt, kind of very cryptic, and he's kind of coaxing him to investigate the things that they did in college. He's trying to get him to look into things. And in this scene, it's very chilling, it's very uncomfortable, and this will be a little bit of a spoiler, but maybe it's a good spoiler to put down. You move this character to suicide. He hangs himself.
Right.
The very first thing I noticed about that whole scene was it very much reminded me of the attic in Alone in the Dark, and I was terrified. I was terrified. Attics terrify me. I'm just gonna put that
Right.
out there. um, and
There's
that's how it's.
another
Go ahead.
I think it's very shocking. Um
Yeah, it is.
and it gives you this sense of like, "Oh, I don't want to do this, but I can't
Yeah.
not." Um I'll say there's another game that does this exact same sort of cold open. I don't know if you've played it, but
Hmm.
it is at the beginning of Burnhouse Lane.
No, I haven't
Again,
played
not
that
a
one.
spoiler because it's the first 2 minutes of the game. Um it starts with a scene like this, but where in this you're just kind of clicking on a thing and you don't really know what's happening until the last kind of
Right.
second.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll say in Burnhouse Lane, if anyone's played it, it is very obvious what you're about to do, and I think you even get an achievement for trying not to,
Oh,
because
really?
as a player, you're just like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Please, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And it is the only way to move forward. But in this game,
Right.
it's kind of just like you click on the only thing available, and you're like, I didn't know that that's what I was having him do.
Yeah.
Oops.
At one point, I realized what was happening, and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no, like I don't.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't want to do that. Um. So for some reason, this character, and we don't know much about him, at first. He does take his own life, and right before that, he writes a letter to his friend asking him to look into the things that they were not studying but kind of experimenting with in college, this wanting to know the truth, the ultimate philosophies, the things that are unknown,
Right.
beyond what this game calls the veil. That is the supernatural setting that they're trying to get to. And
And
yes, as mhm,
it's very effective then, because then you are this character, Jeremiah Devitt, and you are digging through this man's mansion, and you know, as the player, what is waiting in the attic,
mhm,
right? You know what you just did.
yep,
And so there's this tension that's going along as you're solving the puzzles where you're like, you are interested in figuring out like the mystery, but on
yeah,
some level also, okay, but when I'm done, like the final thing that I'm going to discover is my
mhm,
dead friend
yeah,
hanging in the attic.
yeah. Terrifying,
Yeah.
honestly, a very terrifying, tense playthrough, knowing
Mhm.
that even somehow more frightening than, say, if it was ambiguous for some reason. It's like I know the terror. It's kind of like
Yeah.
there's a lot of Hitchcockian things, I think, in this thing, but it kind of reminded me of like Dial M for Murder. I don't know if you've seen that, but
Mm-mm.
the viewer already knows what happened in that movie. They see it, and it's just such a tense watch. And so I felt the same way about this game. I already knew what happened, and I felt so tense.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start playing this game, as soon as you go to Anthony's mansion, you just know there's gonna be some paranormal shit happening, even though it could have gone either way, right? That it didn't have to go so heavy on the
Mm,
paranormal, because there wasn't a reason to yet. But in the
right.
first chapter, you are already seeing paranormal things, and uh, I think this is why it's Lovecraftian, or why people refer to it as Lovecraftian, is you don't know when your character is hallucinating or not, to be honest. You don't
Mhm.
actually know if some of these things are really happening. You know what I mean? There are moments in this
Right.
game that are not natural, that you don't expect, and they don't necessarily hurt your character. So, that being said, if your character's not being hurt, what are the things that are really happening here? Are we
Right.
hallucinating? Or is there something cursed in this house due to their past, experimentations, due to their past wanting to get beyond the veil, because we learn how dangerous it actually is.
It took me a while to understand that some of the things I was seeing weren't true.
Yeah,
I believed wholeheartedly as I was playing the beginning of the game. Everything I was seeing, I just took at face value. I was like,
right.
yeah, okay, all these things are happening. And it wasn't until one of the later chapters where I was like, wait, this is still in season one. Like, maybe that chapter didn't happen.
Yeah, you could interpret it that way for sure.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of harrowing things that happen in this game that are unexplained, and I really don't know if they happened or not. And the game does imply that because these forces were kind of tampered with and released, that there are forces making horrible things happen, right?
Right.
So people are disappearing, uh people are dying under mysterious circumstances. I think some of those things are true,
Mhm.
but I think some of the hallucinatory things maybe are not true. It's really interesting because in each chapter there are these characters that have their own little stories going on, and you do fetch quests and you kind of help them, and it progresses the story. But I'm thinking mostly of season 2. Maybe
Yes.
we'll get to that later, because in season 1 you're playing Jeremiah, and you are, like I said, you're trying to figure out what you did in college. So you go to Beechworth's mansion,
Hmm.
you figure some shit out, you go back to the boarding school that you were that this has all happened, and you have some insane hallucinations there and
That's
nightmares, and
that's
yeah.
what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
about there, it's like, th- so we're gonna spoil a couple things, I think, as we go, but we'll save some of the ending spoilers for, I guess, like their own moment.
Yeah. This is
But
a deep dive. I think spoilers are going to happen, you know.
right, there's a scene at the end of that one where you get buried alive.
Yeah.
Um, now, clear, like, in the next episode, you are in a very strange place. You come out of a coffin in a very strange place.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing.
Yeah.
And that is the scene where I'm like, did this chapter happen?
Yeah. Yeah, you are buried alive and you wake up in London, which apparently is very far, and your character Jeremiah has no idea how he got there. I did try to clarify that for myself, and some
Hmm.
people say that the you were at the boarding school when this happened. Some people say that the nuns actually saved you, but I'm like,
Yes.
but we're not saved though, because we're still in this coffin that we have to like get out. I don't understand.
But later on, you why don't we jump back a little bit? You're in episode 1, you're looking for your friend who's missing, Anthony Beechworth. You find him eventually hanging in the
Yeah.
attic, and along the way you find all this kind of supernatural stuff, and a lot of bird imagery,
Hmm.
and you know something about somebody trying to look beyond the veil, and Anthony Beechworth was tortured by something. That's basically all you know. Then
Yeah.
not season
Episode.
2, episode 2, you're walking through this boarding school. That's kind of when you find out about the society and philosophy club that you were
Yeah.
in. That's also when you find out about a serum, and you meet Father Ernest,
Ugh, horrible.
who was
Horrible. Some horrible scenes in that episode.
yeah, Father. So you're in a boarding school that has since become like a an old school mental health asylum, like a sanitarium.
It's like less mental health and more because there is a mental health asylum in season 2.
Mm,
It's like nuns taking care of the sick. That's kind of what it is, like little refuge. And yeah, some of the characters are mentally unsound.
I hear you.
Uh
Yes, yeah, that's
yeah, so
true.
it's more like these nuns are taking care of the ill.
But what you find out is that none of these patients are getting better,
Yeah.
and patients are dying more rapidly than maybe they should be.
Yes. And they're very calm about it for some reason.
Yeah,
Like, why
and
is everyone so calm?
no one's allowing you to see, I guess, what was your old teacher, Father Ernest,
Yeah.
and you don't know why.
Well, the nun basically said that he's just so sick that he doesn't take visitors. That was the
Right.
initial. We don't know if that's the reason, but that's the reason given to us.
And then I guess we'll just spoil the end of this segment, because again, we're only 2 episodes into 8 episodes. So
Yeah.
at the end of this, you eventually find Father Ernest, and he tells you all about how he tells you all about the secret philosophy club that you were in.
Hmm.
um you find out that, like, Father Ernest has been, how do you interpret this? Either Father Ernest is killing people, or the groundskeeper is killing people and scapegoating like, how did you take that?
I took it as the groundskeeper, which honestly was one of the scariest things in the game for me, and it's
Mhm,
not even a jump scare. Um, and I'll go ahead and I'll kind of explain. There's a groundskeeper for this, and you find him around like digging graves and
mhm.
upkeeping the boarding school and things like that. And there is this patient that is just being tortured. And he asks us to actually end his life, to euthanize him, basically, because no one's listening to him. He's in pain all the time.
Did you
And
do
we
it?
agreed to, yeah, and we agreed to do it.
I didn't do it.
Well, here's what, oh, you didn't.
No.
Okay, so I agreed to do it. I'm like, it's going to be tough, but I want to have mercy on this patient who is just in pain all the time. So
Right.
I go and I find some morphine. I don't know why they have it. It's in a nun's room. She just adds
It's in
some
a
more.
nun's room.
I mean, they're nurses too, so I don't know. But I found some morphine, and I had to go to a completely separate part to go get this morphine. I couldn't pick it up beforehand. I had to go get it. When I came
That
back,
is an that is a thing that frustrates me in this game. There is a lot of stuff that you run. If you solve a puzzle before the game thinks you should have solved the puzzle, there's a
mhm,
lot of times that things just don't work. You can't pick up an
sure,
object until the game has told you you need the object. You
right,
can't uh an object doesn't work
right,
until the game has told you why the object works,
right.
which can be frustrating if you've again if you are ahead of the of the puzzles in that way.
For
And
this one, it makes sense though that I couldn't pick it up beforehand.
because you didn't have a need for it until the guy asks you to put him
Right.
down. Yeah.
But also, I needed to leave to come back because when I come back, he is not in his bed, but
Yes.
there is a note on his bed that says over and over again, kind of like The Shining, that the groundskeeper is lying. Just that's what it says, sentence by sentence, over and over again, and it scared me. I
Mhm.
I felt chilled in
Uh,
that moment.
so interestingly, I said no.
Okay, I didn't know it would actually. I knew there was an option, but I didn't
Mhm.
know it would actually let you.
The same thing happens.
Okay.
You come back and he is missing, and that note is there. So I guess it only matters towards like your achievements on
Sure. Yeah,
Steam.
yeah. Yeah. And to be clear, the nuns are clearly not in on this. They are saddened by this, as far as I can tell. I wasn't even sure if Father Ernest, if he was even involved in this, or if the
Mm.
boarding school is so cursed by the things that have gone down there that the groundskeeper again is pulling a Jack Torrance and killing people.
um,
Um, it's
here's what
scary, man.
yeah, it is very scary. Here's what I think. I think that the priest is overseeing this.
Mm,
I think the priest is party to the experiments happening and maybe turning a blind eye as to where the people that are getting experimented on are
yeah,
coming from.
yeah,
And Baldwin is the one who's just kidnapping people, or, you know, kidnapping
right,
patients and killing patients. And I
right.
think the nuns know something weird is happening and they don't want to ask too many questions.
Yeah.
That is
But
my understanding.
another very, I think that's a very good theory. I do.
Okay.
I wasn't sure on Father Ernest because he was so out of it, just
Yeah.
completely delusional, and has lost his mind. I don't even know. So, like, I could, for me, I could go either way. I even wondered if Father Ernest, because he was somehow involved in these experiments, he's called one of the witnesses of these experiments. If he has just cursed this boarding school and then bad, just his presence alone, is kind of affecting it in this supernatural way. Another thing that scared me, and there's just subtle things, honestly, that are very chilling.
Right.
Um, there's a nun there who is so deeply saddened by the deaths, and she doesn't know what she's doing wrong, and she prays to God, and she just feels
Mhm.
so hopeless. So we
Yeah.
play a little music box for her, a little song on a music box, and she feels brightened, and she and
And you
feels,
feel good about that as the player.
yeah,
You're like, "Oh, I did finally I
yeah.
did something good for somebody in this game."
It seemed that way at
Mhm.
first, and so this nun decides to leave. I'm like, cool. So I find her on the beach and she's just watching the sunset. I'm like, that's cool. That's nice. Well, lovely. What a lovely little thing.
Yeah.
Good job. So, and by the way, you can totally miss these. So I recommend, if you're
Yes.
playing this game, to recheck locations. This is a game where things change in those locations. You
Correct.
won't lose the game, but they are frightening and you'll get achievements for
And
seeing
there's a
them.
thing in season 2 where I missed something
I did
and
too.
it made the game wildly harder and I had to this is in the
Oh no.
final chapter and I had to
Oh.
restart chapter 8. But yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
shit. Okay.
Mhm.
That's not what I missed. That we're talking about two different things. But
We'll talk
so
about it.
I leave her alone. I was like, she's lost in thought, looking at the cliffs. She's on the beach. Sea is lovely. I come back later,
Mm,
and her habit is there, and her walking cane is
yeah.
there because
Yeah.
she uses a cane. She's an older nun, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified because she's not. What, did she drown? Like, did somebody do something to her? She can't get anywhere without her cane. Her clothes are there. Terrifying
I
thought, honestly.
my interpretation was that she
Raptured. Yeah, I got it.
voluntarily my my interpretation was that she voluntarily walked into the sea. I
I was
think she
wondering that. Yeah.
found peace. I think she knew what was happening
Yeah.
to the people uh in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you gave her some semblance of peace, and she decided to take that and end her life.
Yeah.
That's how I
Mhm.
interpreted that.
I did think about that, and I was sad. I
Yeah.
was very saddened by it. I found it chilling. Those very subtle changes in settings, they're not egregious, right? They're not gratuitous.
Mhm.
violent scenes, but they're frightening. They're frightening to think about.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was chilled when that patient was gone. And there is a theme of people going missing either by their own volition, or we're not
Mhm.
sure. We're not sure where they went. So I do want to get into season 2 because this might not be a common thought, but I actually like season 2 better. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
I
okay,
do
cool.
I do I like it better? I think I like it better. Well, I think we should wrap up our talk about season one.
Yeah,
Maybe we
let's
should just
let's
speed it along a little more
yeah, let's
because
wrap it
we are
up.
going along. So okay, so then he wakes up on the streets of London, and then you're sort of wandering around. It's a very dreamlike streets of London. You're following a mysterious man. He leads you
He seems to be
into
guiding you. Yeah.
Yes. He leads you into the mist, and in the mist you discover men in masks
Yeah.
and like a play that's happening. And then the next chapter, chapter 4,
Mhm.
you find yourself on the estate of a friend, and that's what I'm wondering, like, did chapter 3 even happen?
Yeah.
Because it's in that fourth chapter. I think that's where somebody mentions that you were saved by the nuns
Right.
at the last minute, and so, did you just hallucinate all that while you were recovering? um
That's a very good question. That's very sanitarium like, where maybe your character is so traumatized, and this can happen in real life too, that your brain concocts a little bit of a hallucination for survival.
mhm,
And the game is very good at making you wonder, is this character hallucinating? Is
right.
he dreaming even? Is he just in a dreamlike state? How far are his nightmares going? Kind of a situation. I think it can be interpreted either way. I think you
Mhm,
can speculate that he was at the boarding school and maybe some of these things didn't happen, but maybe he was there,
right.
at some point. But
I
it's
think another
it's really good.
another thing that starts happening here, and you see it in cutscenes, is that your psychiatrist, Dr. Wakefield,
Mhm.
is in these conversations with a friend of his called Dr. Kaufman,
Kaufman,
and
yeah.
they're sort of following Devitt's steps, and they're
Right, cuz
incredibly
he goes
worried about him.
missing.
And they're sort of, yeah, they're wondering how far they should go to try and find Devitt.
Right.
And Kaufman seems to know a little bit more about what's happening than
Yeah.
Wakefield does, but it's very mysterious. Kaufman
Yeah.
doesn't outright say anything. He's just kind of like, "I think you should be worried about your patient."
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of where Jeremiah Devitt, we are not playing him any longer in season 2. He is gone.
mhm.
He is missing as far as we know. Perhaps in the Vale, but we're not sure.
Well, right.
The
So
first season tells you very, very little. The second season
yes.
is where it's going to be explained.
So in that final episode of the second season, you're walking around the state of your friend Alexandra
Dupree, yeah, Dupree or something. Yeah.
Dupree,
Uh huh.
and
I was so scared though, for real.
yeah. Do you want
All
to?
these estates so scare me.
Well, yeah, a lot of these games are just you're exploring a haunted house, basically.
Yeah, it's a
um,
lot of haunted mansions, and again, you don't
yeah.
even know if you're dreaming or hallucinating. And that is like it's that unknown thing where it's like, oh god, I don't
So
even have any inkling of what's going to happen.
right. So you find that Dupree has become basically unstable.
I would say
Um,
almost catatonic. He's in a
okay.
wheelchair in his bedroom and he's mumbling. He's mumbling a lot about the
Oh,
bird
right.
awaits you, and he's almost not with us. And there's a reason for that we'll go into in the next chapter, but he seems to be very far away.
You find out that Dupree or somebody on Dupree's like estate has been doing like experiments with some kind of serum, and
Mhm.
on like an ape.
Oh, was it? I didn't clock that, so nice job.
Old Mike is an ape you find in a grave, and
That was an ape?
yes.
I thought it was a fucking cat. I gotta relook at that scene because yeah, that scene scared me. I'm like, what am I looking at? I know what
Yeah.
scene you're talking about too.
This chapter was really hard for me to understand.
It's a
Um,
rough one. Yeah.
you're basically just walking around reading letters,
Yeah.
and yeah, discovering that something really weird is going into it on in Alexandra's house.
Okay, I'm looking at the screen cap, and that is definitely not a cat. I don't know what I was thinking. I must have blacked out. It is certainly not a cat. Not a cat. You know what? I think because I already saw a cat in the game, and there's like cats and birds, and like I don't
Right.
know. I don't know what happened there, but my brain had a little fart there.
I think this is the first time we see. I might be wrong here because there's so much going on, but I think this is the first time we see a name for the land beyond the veil,
Right?
which
Yes.
is. Do you know how to pronounce it?
Oh no,
It's
I have no idea how to pronounce that.
Xylithol. Xylithol.
I thought xylitol. Yeah, we're butchering that for sure.
Or maybe that's the space between the veil and our world.
I think that is the world. I think that is what's beyond,
That's
quote,
beyond
the
the veil.
last book.
Yeah, is
Yeah, beyond the veil.
Xylithol.
Yeah.
Xylithol.
And there's other
It's
there's
like
other
there's
yeah.
again very Lovecraftian. They just
Yeah,
it's just like made up words that are not meant to be
pronounced.
pronounced. And then I think this is the first time we see that. Again, I might be wrong about this, but I think this is the first time we see the motto of this philosophy group, which is "Vedete ne qui sciat."
I swear we see that in the
Sciat.
first
"Vedete
scene.
ne qui sciat" in the
Yeah.
first scene of the whole game.
I thought Beechworth said it. I could be wrong there, but yeah,
You might be right.
which
This
is
is where
Latin.
I maybe first clocked it. It is Latin for.
Tell no one.
Mhm.
Uh so
Which
yeah, very
we are
exciting.
it's the only rule of this group, and we are expressly breaking that rule right now, me
Yeah.
and you.
Oopsie. There's some heavy stuff happening. We can't keep this to ourselves.
Mhm.
But also, since Jeremiah, you know, we don't see him in the second season. Um, Now we're playing Dr. Wakefield, and we don't have to tell no one. We're not a part of this. Not my rule. This is not my problem, you know? But yeah,
uh,
so the
yeah.
second season is what really gripped me, I think. Don't get me wrong, it all gripped me. The second season, there were some very terrifying parts to that season. That are not going to be spoilers. There's a lot of parts where you find yourself in the dark, in the dead dark. That
Yeah.
terrifies me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I am always afraid of that. And like you can still move, but you're just in the dark. Um
Oh, let's say
mhm,
2 things that happened at the end of season 2, that happened in the last chapter of season 2 that'll become important. Number 1, Alexandra thinks he's being stalked by something.
right. Yep.
And number 2, at the very end, Devitt does inject himself with the serum to try and look behind the veil.
Right. Yes. Yep.
And he's in some like deep dark basement, right?
Yeah, in like a pit. Yeah.
In a pit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so season 2. Um yeah,
Now we are Dr. Wakefield, and we are Jeremiah Devitt's psychiatrist. And our patient has gone missing. And we don't know how close these people
yeah.
are, but for whatever reason, our mentor, another psychiatrist slash doctor named Dr. Coffin, seems to know a lot about the occult
Mhm.
and is kind of insisting that we look into this disappearance and that we follow some leads on where he could be. And so now we are playing Dr. Wakefield, totally different character.
Right.
Um, and
We
we're trying to figure out what happened to Jeremiah, kind of figure out his past so that we can determine where he could be now.
And this is where we start in a sanitarium,
Yeah.
I think they specifically call it a lunatic asylum in the game, but
Yeah, I keep in mind this was like late 1800s, I
it's
think is
set
when
in
it's
the
taking place.
1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just
So
FYI.
right. They're not caring for people very well.
No.
Um And what we're trying to do is we're trying to track down Alexandre Dupre, because when they know that Devitt was last seen in
Yeah.
um what's his name's manor, not Dupre, but the guy who
Beechworth.
hung himself, Beechworth's manor,
Beechworth's
and
manor.
in
Yeah.
Beechworth had written a letter to Dupre, and that is why they go to try and find Dupre.
Yeah.
Um,
And he was he the one that stayed, he had to stay in the asylum, right?
before Devitt meets him and he's kind of
Yeah.
like catatonic and in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Just before that, he had to stay in the asylum.
Yeah. So basically we go there to interview people, and this asylum is falling apart. It's not quote, it's not what it used to be.
Hmm.
There's only really a handful of patients that you can talk to. But interestingly, all the patients seem to have an understanding or memory of Dupree and the things that have happened. You know what I mean? Like they seem to be involved
They
somehow.
seem to,
There's
yeah, they
yeah,
have a memory of Dupree that disturbs them, and they all seem to know about this thing called the playwright,
yeah,
which is WRIGHT,
yeah.
playwright, and you don't know what that is. But
Not yet, no.
so you're kind of tracking down Dupree. You eventually find that the um, institution has boarded up or bricked up
Yeah,
his old room, and somehow you get led to a sea captain who
yeah.
had
Captain Skid. Captain Skid was a sea captain. He was like in the Navy as a military man that he's now in the asylum because he feels like a failure, a coward, not a failure, specifically a coward. But the society, the secret society, they kind of hire him because they believe, allegedly, that he had gone past the veil
Mhm.
and had survived and knows how to do it.
I'll
And
say
so,
this. Wait,
yeah,
just 1 second. The person that we meet that feels like a failure is Sergeant Conghill, who
you're
was
right. I'm
with
so sorry.
No, who was that's fine.
Damn
Who
it.
was with Captain Skid.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right. You're right.
it gets very confusing.
Yeah, it does. But
But
yeah, you're
because
right.
Skid is also super traumatized and has been spending his time in opium dens.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. 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 I remember now. Sorry, there's a lot of locations in this game, you guys. We are really
Yeah,
led to many, many, many locations. Yeah, and one of them is an opium den named the Crimson Den.
and
And
you go there and you become overwhelmed with the smoke, and you have a hallucination
mhm,
where people are so all throughout season 1 you see people wearing these crazy masks, um and these robes, and and a lot of times they're on this stage with a red curtain, so you see some characters. I believe they're in the same robes, right?
yes, they are.
And they are on this red stage, but they have animal masks. One is a snake, one is a bird mask, one is a wolf mask, and they're
Mhm,
putting on a play where the wolf catches the bird and the snake in bed together, and
mhm.
the wolf is angry because the bird is his wife and was
Right.
cheating on him.
Right.
And they the wolf challenges the snake to a duel, and we have no idea what the hell that means.
No clue. There's definitely a great emphasis on animals and folklore, I would say, very much in the vein of Hobbs Barrow
Mhm.
and very much in the vein of The Wicker Man, which we'll probably talk about very shortly.
Oh my god, yeah. And we will see these characters with animal masks again, but I'm
Yes.
not sure that it explains what's happening in this scene.
It does not. No. And again,
uh
it goes to say like, when are we hallucinating and when are
mhm,
we, are we hallucinating for the sake of narrative?
right.
Like maybe the character, maybe this is just trying to help us, maybe it's helping the character. I don't actually know.
Right.
But yeah, like I
We
said, that one of the things
yeah.
I really like about these chapters is that there are other characters in these games that we're helping that are not, they're not related to that.
Mhm.
And I'll go more into that kind of later game, but especially in the Ellis Moore game, which is we're taken to Ireland. at some point. And that honestly has its own little storyline going on, my friend. It was
Uh,
awesome.
you do meet Devitt in your opium haze.
Yeah.
There's also a scene early on where you have a nightmare about a person asking you for something that somebody took, and then that happens to you in real life, and they're looking for something that Alexandre Dupre took that you
Yeah.
find in his room. It's very strange. I don't think that's ever explained either.
No, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that are not explained. And this is kind of where the game does have some surreal and kind of abstract thinking
Yeah,
here. Weird things happening to make the atmosphere, I think. And maybe
right.
you're not even really supposed to know. There's a lot of scenes in The Wicker Man that are not necessarily explained. We don't
Mhm.
really know what they mean, but they are weird occurrences that happen to enhance the atmosphere. Same thing with The Shining, right? I think The Shining and Stephen King is a really good example because
Okay.
you don't know really what things are really, really tangibly happening here, and
Right.
there's just these weird, unexplained things, that are
Or even
happening.
like in a Shirley Jackson novel, right?
Hmm.
You have like Haunting of Hill House, right? You don't know what's going on inside Eleanor's head, and you don't know what's actually a haunted house.
Right.
But from either explanation, sometimes there's just spooky shit going on,
Yeah.
and it's just meant to spook you out as a reader. It's not necessarily meant to be correlative with like whatever one of the potential explanations could be. It's just this is just
Correct.
to spook you out. This is just to say that when spooky shit's going on,
Yeah.
coincidences happen more often and things begin moving between the veil of the unknown and the veil of and the world of the known, right?
Yeah.
I think is what it's trying to say. Like it's just like when
Yeah.
you open that door, things come through it, and not
Yes.
all of them have to do with the journey you're on.
Yeah. Exactly.
But so at the end of this chapter, you wake up and Kaufman is there. He says that one of the woman that you were talking to, the one that was most afraid of the playwright, and you mentioning Alexandre Dupree, went missing from the asylum.
Right. Yep.
And then we
So
move
our
on.
search was in vain. We didn't find anything, or we didn't find
Mhm.
him, rather.
So then we move on to the next episode, episode 2 of season 2, where we are traveling to find uh for some reason, I don't know what brings us here, but Adam Wright is Kaufman's mentor, and he
Right. He is
lives
also another doctor, and I think he's also fluent with like the occult.
in what is it,
Wickport.
Wickport, and we're just going to see him to like talk to him about this.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, Wright is way like super crazy involved in this whole conspiracy,
Yeah.
which I don't know. Does that put suspicion on Kaufman? Like, why don't we say right now the playwright is the name of the philosophy society
Correct. That
that
is what
was
we're told.
founded by the four boys and the priest
Yes.
in season 1.
Hmm.
Is Kaufman a part of it?
I think that is something to be speculated. I
Okay.
never thought he was truly involved, but I do think he knew more than what he was telling our character. I
Hmm.
think he was maybe on the side of being interested
Okay.
in these things that are happening, or maybe he knew that Professor Wright was somewhat involved with this
Because he
because
keeps encouraging us,
yeah, he keeps encouraging
and then just
us.
coincidentally, his mentor is part of the group.
Yeah, I would say that these things are connected, but it is
Hmm.
very ambiguous. Kaufman's role especially is very ambiguous
Yeah.
because he he comes with us, and I feel like we do all the work. Kaufman's just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'll just stay in this room.
And
I'm
he
gonna
usually
talk to
just
my
waits
friend.
in a room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every time we find something, we're like, oh, I gotta show Kaufman this. And
And
it's just like, what?
he's like, good, go do more.
Yeah, go do more. I'm like, why me? And uh
You do more. You go to see Professor Wright, and he's very much like Dupre. He's just sitting in a chair.
yeah.
Or no, he's laying in bed,
He's
right?
in bed. Yeah.
Staring out a window.
Yeah.
And once again, you explore a manor. like a fancy rich man's manor
Ugh.
that's full of spooky stuff.
This one has a bunch of, like, ravens in it.
There is a inscrutable puzzle in this one. The map puzzle. How did you feel about that puzzle?
I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
I looked up a thing. I couldn't figure it
I
out.
didn't look it up, but I tried it like 7 times
Okay.
and eventually got it, and I was like, "Wait, this doesn't correlate." You get a map that has a bunch of areas you can press in, and then
Yeah.
you get directions that are like, you start in the desert, you move west till you hit the ocean, and then you get turned around by the king, so you go backwards
Ugh.
and you head south, and it's like
There's
there's
definitely, like, an order. It's like an order puzzle, but
right.
I couldn't really decipher it, so I
It
yeah.
There is a point where you have to go north and east, and
Yeah.
neither of those are in the directions. It's just a poorly written clue. Like, it's just
Yeah, it is.
the solution is not part of the clue, and it drove me crazy. Like, I've circled, like, 7 times here in my notes. There's, like there's nothing that tells you to do the final 2 steps of the map.
Yeah. We
Um
kind of already talked about the puzzles in a previous episode, but they are for me hit and miss. Some of them are
Yes!
great and I love them and they make sense. Some of them are like, what? I'm like clicking everything on everything because that's what I got to do. Now, if you play, I don't know if this is on the computer, but if you play on PS4, there is a
Mhm,
hotspot button you can
mhm.
press that at least shows you where you can look. It at least gives you hotspot hints, which is helpful because this is very chunky pixels and everything looks
Yeah.
a little abstract.
I think probably when you're closer to the screen, like you are in PC, it's
Right,
easier to see those pixels. Like, I didn't feel like I was pixel hunting, even though I technically was, because the pixels are so chunky, and most of the time, the thing you need to find is like white or red
right.
or
Yeah,
blue, and it's sitting on a field of brown or black or
yeah,
like or gray. So
yeah,
it always everything you need to pixel hunt stands out really hard.
yeah.
But if you're a little bit farther back from the screen, it might not as much.
Yeah. So in this episode,
Yeah,
we are able to actually hypnotize Dr. Wright
yeah,
because we learn that in this mansion, because all of these mansions have very strange things like in them, like very strange secrets.
yeah.
There's a tunnel in which there is something horrible. And this tunnel that we find is blocked off, but we need to get in there.
You realize that the cold open that you played here, you were Professor Wright, and you were blowing the tunnel up
Yeah. So it is completely
to
you
seal it.
cannot
Yeah.
get in there. So we have to hypnotize Dr. Wright. It's interesting. It kind of goes into an interactive fiction kind of game like Zork. Like it's like tell us where you are. You can go left, you can go right. I like what is happening? I think I started taking notes because I think the map correlates with something later in the game. It's very
Okay.
Twin Peaks, honestly. So we hypnotize him and we're able to get him to give us better directions, hints to where we can get into this underground tunnel.
Now, this was very frustrating to me because
Mhm.
once you do this, the mansion becomes closed off to you for a section of time, and
Mhm.
it's still the same chapter, but you end up in a bunch of different new locations. And I had solved a puzzle that you don't need to solve till later, and I
Oh.
didn't know that the a location opens up again. So I thought I missed some sort of secret. There's a
Oh
puzzle where you have to get a
no.
bunch of statues to take their masks off, and then they drop
Yeah.
something on the ground. I had decided to go visit right before I picked the thing up off the ground because he was on the way.
Yeah.
Then suddenly I'm sitting through 3 cutscenes, and
Oh
then
no.
the mansion is closed off, you can't go back. And I'm like, "Oh no!
Oh
What about that puzzle
no.
that I spent that time solving?" Turns
I
out
mean, luckily there's no unwinnables in this game. So,
I thought it was like a secret that I
yeah.
had found, but turns out you go back to the mansion and I was ahead. So
Yeah.
whatever. Now is where it gets very Lovecraftian because now you
And
talk to
weird.
another sea captain who has heard a bunch of weird voices under the water and keeps
Yeah.
referring to quote unquote him.
Yeah.
Speaking in a language he doesn't recognize but somehow understands.
Yeah.
And then you find another person who was, I guess, a fisherman, and you find him past a cemetery standing on
Like a
the
lookout
like a
almost.
lookout, yeah, and he talks about a strange subhuman creature that he's seen moving around the rocks, and
Yes.
looking upon the creature could drive you insane. But now he is obsessively standing on the cliff waiting for the creature to show up again to kill him. And it's like both of those are Lovecraft short stories.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I yeah.
100%. I mean, those are like straight out of
The sea stuff,
the
absolutely.
sea stuff, the inhuman horror, the it causing an
Yeah.
obsession, the language that you don't know but can somehow understand. Those are all things that come directly from Lovecraft.
So how did you interpret the end of that chapter? Because this is one of the times I was very confused and
I'm
my
still
suspension of
confused by it.
okay, my suspension of disbelief is not working on this chapter. I don't know how we went from the end of that chapter to the beginning of the next,
Mhm.
because we find ourselves in a situation where we do get into that tunnel, and
Yes.
it's implied that we find this creature, and it's also implied that we're attacked by it.
There's a thing in that, and it's not the creature you'd expect. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's like a piano that's been playing. You can hear it in the mansion. It's traveling through a bunch of gold pipes. Eventually, you find the room where somebody has just been in this tunnel playing the piano. I'm guessing that thing that was supposed to be playing the piano is this creature.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You get attacked by a spider, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's a weird
then
looking thing.
after going through a maze, which was annoying, um,
Yeah.
you get attacked by a spider. You find a thing that says you find a body, right? And then you find a
Yep.
note that says somebody named H.A. was down
Yeah.
here, and had entered the Vale, I guess. And
Yeah.
then you get attacked by a spider, and the chapter ends. You expect to get attacked by a crow, and I
Right.
still, now that I've finished the game, I still don't know why we didn't get attacked by a crow.
I don't either. I'm a
I don't know where the
little
spider
confused.
came from. There's nothing else in any of the games about a spider.
Yeah. It's
uh,
it's a very almost like alien-esque looking spider. It's
mhm.
not a normal looking spider, but we do
Yeah,
not die. We
yeah.
unfortunately something terrible happens to our colleague,
Oh
Dr.
yeah.
Kaufman.
In all this, yeah. At some point, Wright dies, and then eventually, yeah, after we get attacked by the spider,
Kaufman also dies.
Kaufman dies.
And prior to die, and again, mysterious circumstances, but implication that it is the forces unknown that are maybe intervening with these lives. But before he dies, he writes us a lovely letter that encourages us to keep going, to figure it out, and to not stop. And this is our
Uh,
quest now. We got to do it for our mentor. We got to do it for Dr. Kaufman. And this leads us to, I think, my favorite part of the game. I was terrified the whole time. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't expecting anything terrible to happen, but I was scared the
because
entire time.
you start out, yeah, in the dark.
Yeah.
Is this
And
what you're
the
talking about? And you just hear breath and running.
Brett, yeah, there's many. So in this next chapter, we find ourselves uh there basically we
This
get
is
a
we're on
lead.
we're on basically episode 3 of season 2, so we're on
Yeah,
basically chapter 7 of 8 right now.
yeah.
So coming towards
Getting to
the
the
end.
end. Yeah. So we are led there, and we get a lead that it's like this is a very supernatural place. It's called Ellis Moor. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not really sure,
Eilish
but
Muir?
Eilish Muir.
Eilish Muir?
It is Irish, but it is Irish. And it's
Yeah,
just
it's one
this
of like the
little
islands around Ireland.
yeah,
Yeah, islands around Ireland. That's correct.
yeah.
Yes.
And I want you all to honestly think about
Ailish Moor. Yeah, because
oh Elishmore.
somebody spells it phonetically later in the game,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
nice.
Ailish Moor.
Ailish Moor. Okay, so it's this little, if you can imagine, an Irish, uh, kind of grassy, almost dreary area with a little town, a lighthouse.
Like the
I really,
Hebrides. If you
oh,
know the Hebrides of Scotland, it's like
ooh.
that.
I also want people to think of Somerset Isle from The Wicker Man because that is where this is going. It's a
Okay.
very strange island where absolutely there is something wrong here.
Hmm.
I mean, we find a giant hole in the ground. It's not explained. The
Mm-mm.
characters are off. The characters are very, very off. And this is one of the scariest things that's not explained. And maybe you have an explanation for it. Maybe the
Uh,
viewers have an explanation
I
for it.
think
Do you
it's
know where I'm
explained.
going? Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I'm
okay. Where are you going?
There is a child that goes missing.
Oh, no, you're right. I do not understand this.
Okay.
This is when I started to think of this game as a series of short stories, right? Like there is a
Yeah.
through line, but it seems like each episode is a story about one aspect of this journey, and they're all
Yes.
connected, but they could each be, if you're okay living in mystery,
Yeah.
they could each be extracted. And like the last one was you trying to um figure out what was wrong with Wright and get to
Yeah.
his basement. This
And
one
honestly,
is
I really love that. I
Mhm.
love that in this chapter, I'm almost getting it's related, but I'm almost getting a different story with it. It's
Right, we're
kind of like
trying
a
to
collection of Edgar Allan Poe stories, right? It's
yeah. Like in this one, yeah, we're trying to find a missing boy. In the first one, we're trying to understand what happened to Alexandre Dupre. So, like,
yeah.
you could see each one as, and even in the first season, you're trying to escape a weird London slum,
Yeah.
or you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out why your friend invited you to this mansion and where your friend
Yeah.
is, right? Like
Yeah.
each one is its own little short story, and there's like a sort of a beginning, middle, and an end to each chapter.
Yeah, and I really like that. I think it's good world building. I think it keeps it grounded,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not I think the problem with a lot of Lovecraftian games is it goes too hard.
Okay.
And it gets a bit much, right?
Right.
It's not that this is a realistic story. It's not. It's very supernatural, but there needs to be some grounding elements here. Even Wicker Man had grounding elements of these characters, even though they're not great. But
But
you know, in
if what you were saying was this is your favorite chapter,
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah,
This was my favorite chapter.
yeah. So this is the chapter where yeah, it does feel like a short story. We're on this island. There's a reunion happening of what appears to be, I guess you could call them spirits, and uh, everyone's kind of prepping for this festival. Again, very much like Wicker Man, and there are Wicker Men everywhere on this island,
Yeah,
and they're
as they're
terrifying.
yeah, they're all prepping for this they're all prepping for this night of reunion or something that they call
Yeah,
it. It's like
and
a
they're all in
festival of
masks.
reunion. And
Yeah,
they all are wearing animal masks, which you will remember from the play
yeah,
in, I think, episode 1 of this season.
yeah.
At the same time, this boy went missing. Um
Yeah. Which
and
again, that feels again very Wicker Man because we're there. I mean, we're not there to. It is not our job to find the boy, unlike
we're
Wicker
trying to
Man, where we are tasked to find a little girl. But it did remind me of that.
we're trying to find a yeah, we're trying to find the Kronmeeden.
Yes.
Kronmead Anne. We're trying to find it, and it's this place that supposedly can offer you access to the veil.
Right.
As you're
But like
going through, as
what do
you're
you
trying to
think about
yeah.
what do you think about the missing child though? Because it for me a lot of things seem to have even a vague explanation, right? So for
Mhm.
example, the guy who went missing in the nun house in the boarding school, we can kind of imply, we kind of know what may have happened to him because of the groundskeeper. I am terrified. It's a chilling thought to me that this little child went
Mhm.
missing in this kind of supernatural place
Yeah.
where there is a Cthulhu type monster that can grant
Mhm.
you access to the veil to another setting. I I actually think it's a very impactful part of the game where they had a child go it's very Stephen King. They had a child go missing and he doesn't come back. And it's chilling.
I Here's what I want to do. I want to really quickly run through the plot of this one because I think there are questions that might help us answer that.
Okay.
I think there are other questions that might help us answer the question of what happened to the sun. So they're all getting ready for the festival of reunion while you're looking for this crone meeting, and more and more of them disappear. And as you get closer, and you find out that this boy um, has been drawing pictures of the hole and writing about this guardian of the hole, which sounds very much like, at this point you also know what the crow that you keep seeing
Mhm.
seems to be like the guardian of the veil.
Yeah.
So you can sort of make the connection in your head. Like there's a monster that Kieran like knows something about that lives in this deep dark hole that they think is the passage to another world or whatever. Very
Right.
similar.
And the raven has a name, and it's Searmog? Smearmog? I am
Oh,
butchering that so hard.
Simmerg.
Simurg? Yeah.
Simmerg is like a bird demon that
Yeah.
guards the veil. Nobody outright says that till chapter 8, but
Right.
you
But it's
should know it by
you can
now.
you can put it together. There
Mhm.
there is a lot of emphasis
Yeah.
on raven, corvid, type of birds, which is great. Those kind of birds always have a lot of folklore behind them. I think it makes
Yeah.
sense. They lead people to death. They lead people to other dimensions.
Other
Just
worlds.
other
Yeah.
places. They're meant to do that. They're travelers almost.
Right. So as you're trying to track down this boy and trying to find the crone meeting, you realize that they're kind of like they seem to be connected, so you're following these paths as they're
Mhm.
converging, and as you're doing it the villagers start disappearing. They stop being anywhere, and wicker men start showing up outside of where you are.
Yeah.
And basically every time you solve a bigger puzzle, one of the wicker men lights on fire, so
Yeah, and we don't
somebody
see that
is
happening, by the
mm-mm.
way. We discover them and somebody is following us. Yeah.
You do stuff like you repair a lighthouse. By the way, Roses,
Mhm.
there's a point where you need to charge a battery.
I had to look
However,
that up.
however, I did too. This was the one place that I looked at a walkthrough,
Yeah.
because I didn't know you could pick up the battery and take it with you.
Oh,
However, you know why you have to charge the
why?
battery? Because the lighthouse keeper, lost the crank. A loose
He lost
crank is
the
somewhere
crank.
on this island, and we don't even get to find it.
He lost the crank. This is a lost loose crank, my friends.
There's a loose
This is
crank in this
beyond.
game that we don't even get to see.
Feel ripped
Anyway,
off.
so uh all right,
Oh, so
so
you're telling me this man can't charge a battery? I'm sorry. Like, you shouldn't be a lighthouse keeper if you don't know how to maintain stuff. But
well, yeah. I
that
mean,
reminded me of
he's not a
Curse of
point
Monkey
and
Island, by the way.
right, he's not a point and click character who can think like, "Oh, if I just it if I take the battery out and bring it to a bicycle and then fix the bicycle and then run the bicycle, it'll charge the battery." Like that's just such a point and click logic.
What
Um
is this? That was so confusing to me.
but uh you do discover whether it's the person who's been lighting the wicker men on fire or not. You do find somebody that's been following you. He's wearing a scary like dragon
Very
mask
scary mask. Yeah.
that is reminiscent of what Kieran, the boy missing, has been drawing as the guardian of this pit. uh and you chase him to this like really eerie clockwork playroom that's supposed to be Kieran's playroom.
Yeah.
He runs into the back of the room. You chase him. Um, he basically leaves you. I forget what he leaves you, but it's like the last thing you need to
Yeah. Yeah.
get to the end
He
of the
takes off his
chapter.
mask, and underneath the mask is something that you needed. You're right. I can't remember the item. And
And now he's
man,
in
the
the.
sound design in this game,
Oh
fucking
my god!
brilliant.
Yeah,
Because you don't see what's under this mask, but you can hear him sniffling and like,
and you can see his
ah,
shadow as he's
very
like
scary.
pacing in the dark, and he's like this hunched over, kind of like deformed humanoid creature,
Yeah.
and you refuse to go closer to him.
Yeah.
And so you take the thing and you leave. You go to the
Thank God,
bottom.
because I didn't want to go closer to that. Are you serious? No way.
You go to the bottom. You end up in the bottom of that pit. I can't
Yeah.
remember how. How do you get?
So in the game, you get somebody who is living on the island has left kind of like a legacy of hints. Somebody
Mhm.
whose house was burnt down tells you,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, somebody tells you that there is a mural on a specific wall, and that actually leads you into the pit. And there's a series of puzzles that you need to figure out to get
Mhm.
to this pit.
Yeah,
So yeah, you don't just fall into the pit.
we're skipping over most of the puzzles. Like all of this is gated by puzzles, and again, like
Yes,
we've said, some
yes,
of them are good, some of them not so much.
yeah.
a lot of them in the first season relate to opening up doors. A little less of them in the second season
Yeah,
relate to opening
so
up
many
doors.
keys.
But the second season puzzles are way better than the first season. Anyway,
I agree. Yes, I very much agree with that. And
s-
I would like to actually not talk about the final chapter because I want people to play this game. Um
interesting.
yeah, but I do
Okay.
want to speculate on like I said on
Well,
some of these things. So what did
so
you
I do
think?
I do want to talk about, hold on, because I do think we have an answer to where Kieran is. So we go
Really?
into this pit, we open a coffin, something in the coffin. The thing in the coffin is like, you expect it to be what, some woman who has been referenced a couple times.
Yes.
Instead, it's like it's
Like
like
a
a half
bird
human,
skull.
half creature, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Half bird, and then you discover you're at the bottom of the pit because somebody pushes a big stone slab over it, and you're trapped down there.
Yes.
Now, there's two mysteries here. Who was the deformed creature? There's a couple mysteries. Who was the
Yeah.
deformed creature in the dragon mask
Yep.
that ran into Kieran's playroom when he needed safety?
Yeah.
Where did Kieran the boy go? And
Mhm.
how do people in this town turn into deformed creatures?
Yes.
It is my assumption that the deformed creature wearing the dragon mask is the boy Kieran. Because just
Very
like all the other
interesting.
characters in the game who become obsessed with the other side,
Right.
they end up either dead, insane, or
Mhm.
transformed in some way.
Yes, and that is told to us almost verbatim in one of these parts is that if you go to this veil, it's not that you die necessarily. You are just a changed person. So I'm struggling with the Kieran thing because I guess I mean if he's like very deformed, I guess I thought that that was an adult character in there.
Yeah, but we also come across other children that were Kieran's age, and they're our height.
Okay, fair. Yeah, fair, fair. So, yeah, no, that is a very good theory. I just don't I would go with that theory. I'm still like a little unsure because it is so scary to just have a child disappear. Um
Mhm.
and it wouldn't be the first time that something awful has happened in this game
But
in these
yeah,
chapters. Yeah.
the boy is obsessed with knowledge the same way, again, all the people who were destroyed throughout this game were
Mhm.
obsessed with
So does
knowledge.
that
He wanted to
mean
glimpse beyond the veil. He didn't quite
yeah.
know that's what he was doing,
Oh,
but
okay, wait. A thought. It is
mhm,
formed. Okay. The last place that Kieran was found was in a house where a woman was talking about the veil essentially, like tapping into there was a woman that lived on this island that was kind of also obsessed with knowledge
mhm,
and obsessed with the portal and her name was Marie, I think, and she wanted to see it and she had discovered this mural. The
right.
last place that Kieran was seen was at that house. Did he discover the same stuff we did about the mural? Did he get behind the veil and then became deformed and that's why nobody saw him ever again, you know?
Right. I
Yeah.
think that might be the case, and his father didn't want to talk about it with anybody and had withdrawn from public life. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
possible that his father even knew what happened to him.
It's possible. Yeah, there's a very mysterious, again, very Wicker Man-esque, very mysterious owner of the land or noble of
Yeah,
the land.
it's hard to tell. There's like clearly a conspiracy and a cult on Eilish
Yes.
Moore, but it's hard to tell whether they are complicit in the things that whether they are complicit in the things that are happening to you, or whether it's Kieran or whatever
Yeah.
that creature was. I can't tell. I can't tell how complicit they were.
I can't either. Because you do get a little bit of narrative from the lighthouse owner who is very grounded in reality. He thinks it's all a farce. You know, he
Yeah,
tells us like, yeah, they're doing this reunion thing and everyone's really superstitious, but it really is a bunch of nonsense. And I think there's a moment where somebody says, and it might have been the lightkeeper, that if you choose not to see it, then it's not there. You know what I mean? So he's implying that people are making up stuff in their head almost, which is an interesting thing to bring to the table considering all of this hallucination and like kind of abstract thought and unexplained
Mhm.
characters and uh yeah, it was just very interesting to me that we had this grounded character who is absolutely certain that this is all nonsense, you know?
Right. Yeah, it is nice to have a character like that because it felt like finally we had sure we were like we were standing on solid ground.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
something was real.
Exactly. But yeah, that was my favorite chapter. I was so engaged with that chapter. It's very folk horror heavy. And that's why sometimes I do struggle to call this game completely Lovecraftian because it is so many forms
Right.
of horror in here. You know, there's a very heavy occult and cult aspect. Let's be honest here. The society that we talk about could be considered a cult. Um,
Right.
I think there's a lot of Stephen King. I think there's Hitchcock, and I think it's very, very heavy Edgar Allan Poe. There's a bleakness to this game, and a depression almost to this game.
Okay.
Even the like other NPCs and the characters, nobody is actually like having a good time. No one's really there's not like a fun, bright character in this game. You know what I mean?
Right. There's a couple well, yeah, I mean there's the tavern owner, but
Even she's kind of
she was
like snarky and yeah, you
yeah.
know, and over it
Um
because everyone's fallen on hard times, you know, and like in a
yeah.
Lovecraft story, everyone has fallen on hard times. You're in
I'll
a
say
little fishing village, and yeah,
this game has basically no humor. I'll say that too,
that's true.
which is interesting for a point and click adventure game.
Right. This
Um,
there and I mean no humor. It's not there are not jokes in this game. You guys, this is a drama, a thriller. You know what? It's a psychological thriller in my mind.
so what were your questions? So you had some questions. So there's the final chapter where a lot of this stuff is revealed, but some of it's still sort of vague. I will want to ask you one spoilery question before we leave, but
Go right ahead.
what are some of your questions that you had? What are some of the theories?
I think you answered it. I mostly wanted to theorize about Kieran because there are so many characters that you're just not really they seem to have a horrible end, but you're not sure if they have a horrible end. Like we're speculating right about the nun who maybe sacrificed herself to the sea.
Hmm.
It's interesting because if that theory is true, that means she chose that for herself as opposed to some of the other characters who were kind of maybe exposed to the portal. You know, like Kieran. Like he didn't choose that necessarily. He got there, he didn't choose it. So I it's just interesting to me that some of these characters are just not explained. And like what about the guy who was asking for something that was stolen? Like what was I mean, that's the chapter that you speculated that did that even happen? Because some
Hmm.
of these characters are so unrelated to anything that you gotta kind of wonder. But I think you kind of nailed my question because it was mostly about Kieran. That was the one place where I really wasn't sure if that creature had anything to do with it, if he was burning the Wicker Men, if he was on our side even. Um, But like you said, and like the game says, if you see the veil, if you are exposed to these things, you will come back entirely a different person. And I don't want to give too many spoilers about spoilers.
Well, and not yeah, not everyone comes back from the veil,
Right.
but most people do, and all the characters that we've met that we find have been to the veil and have come back.
But they're
Yeah,
like,
they are transformed in some very negative way.
what do you think about the theory though that so Alexander Dupree, for example,
Hmm.
we find him in a strange state. Do you think that part of him is in the veil and his this other part
Like
of
his
him?
consciousness is in the veil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
eh,
mean
yeah.
that occurred to me because like again, I don't know some of the things that I don't know if they happened or not. I wonder if it's like they didn't happen in our world, but maybe they happened in the Vale. Maybe for
Yes.
example, the chapter in the slums of London
Yeah.
was uh Devitt in the Vale
Right.
that whole time while he was unconscious and recovering from being attacked by the janitor.
Yeah.
Um yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think we find out, we find out who started this whole thing. We find out who's involved and who's not. Well, no, we don't find out who's not. We just find out some people that are definitely involved. We find out who did it
Exactly.
wrong. And then we make a choice at the very end. That's the thing that I want to know what you chose. But
Okay,
uh
yeah, we can talk about that.
I mean, but there's so many other questions like what was the snake, what was the bird, and what was the wolf?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, yeah, the wolf
there's a
I'm
point
not sure on. They
there's a
do
point in
sort of
chapter
talk about the snakes.
in there's bird imagery, there's snake imagery, there's one point where you see a wolf head mask.
Yeah.
And there's one point where it says you can never know the entire aspect, and this is in episode 4, says something like you can never know the entire aspect of your own truth, and then says something like terrible will happen if you bring the snake and the bird together. And like
Yes.
that makes it me think that they are supposed to be metaphors for some part of, again, your quote unquote own truth. So is it like
Right.
fear and curiosity
Yeah.
combined? Because fear is like a big thing here, and
Mhm.
clearly curiosity is a big thing because that is both Devitt and Wakefield's entire motivation is curiosity.
Yeah, and,
But
like, the truth and philosophy and yeah.
right, the thing that pushes you into the veil
Mhm.
is fear. And that's the thing that other characters are trying to induce in you, or
Yes.
have been trying to induce in other characters to get them beyond the veil.
Yes.
But the wolf is generally a symbol of anger when you see it in media.
Yeah.
Like that's just the semiotics of seeing a wolf in
Yeah.
something. And the wolf shows up angry
Mhm.
in the play when he catches the bird and the snake in bed together.
Right.
So
That is those are extreme yeah. I'd have to, like, dig really deep into, like, thinking about the
I mean,
metaphor for that,
the
because I think wolves can
mhm,
also represent, like, a pack and loyalty and, like, hunting. And maybe, that goes back to the play where somebody was unloyal to the wolf, and that is why he was so
right.
angry. Um, yeah, I don't
So
know.
yeah, so I mean, loyalty is angry that fear and curiosity are mixing. That doesn't make sense, and neither does anger is
Yeah.
confronting fear and curiosity. Like
Talk to the
like
writer.
none of the none of the ways that I can straw that metaphor makes sense. And I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, this is what I was talking about when the first episode that we talked about this is there's a little bit of like writerly weirdness
sure.
in these games where it's like they're going off on some poetic tangent where everything's a metaphor, and you get this
Yeah,
vague feeling that either this only makes sense to the writer or this doesn't even make sense to them, and it's
right.
just poetic flourish. Um, because here's the thing: semiotics is supposed to be innate, right? When you weave a symbol into your work, it's supposed to speak to something in the viewer that, or the
Mhm.
reader or viewer or player that they might not even consciously pick up, but they instantly know something else about your story without you having to communicate it, right? Like
Right, right,
if you show a person on a cross, right, you
right,
instantly know that person is a martyr. If you
right,
show a person um wading into the ocean and then stepping back out, you know that that person's trying to wash off some sort of sin or guilt or
right.
something from their past. Like there's things that you just know. And
Yeah,
I think this game is full of symbolism that is not coming through.
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. In that way, I kind of almost compare it to like Twin Peaks,
Okay.
where some of these things they're almost meant to be felt and maybe not understood fully, but felt. Almost this abstract
Right.
feeling.
Well, but then it's like the developer of Her Story, Sam Barlow, said,
Mhm.
you know, you don't have to reveal all the answers to your questions, but yeah, at
Right.
least have to know the answers to your questions. Do you get the
Okay.
feeling, do you feel satisfied after playing these two games that the writers knew the answers to all their questions?
I do. I think the
Okay.
writers are satisfied. I do get that idea. I
Okay.
don't know if the players are, and maybe that's purposeful.
I
Maybe this is an
Yeah.
American Psycho type of thing where there are things up for interpretation.
I'm a little more doubtful. Like I know
Okay,
they want us to I know they want things to be up to interpretation, and I know they want us to think through and interpret what some of these things are, but I don't exactly know that there's an answer to who is the guy who asked for the thing that was stolen. I don't
you know,
exactly know that there's an answer to what is the snake, what is the wolf, and what is the bird. I don't know that we
yeah,
know who this is from chapter 4, so I'll be vague about it. I don't know if we know who the trembling child is. Like I
right.
don't know if all of those have I don't even know if the developers have legitimate answers to that, because again, even if they do, it's not coming through.
Okay,
And it's not even coming through in a way where I feel like I could make some guesses.
sure.
I
Yeah,
mean, if we have listeners that feel like they have a stronger handle on some of these questions than we do, feel free to write in.
yeah.
I would even be down to read some reader interpretations, like just do a segment where we read emails where people tell us what their interpretations of some of these weird things are.
I would
I would
love that. I love to read about theory on more vague stuff. So
Mhm.
I would love to hear some of your
If you write in,
interpretations.
keep it to a paragraph or two. Don't go crazy, because if we're gonna be reading it, but yeah, if you played the last door and you have theories, or you think you can answer questions that we didn't answer, and that maybe me and Roses can debate a little bit about whether we agree or disagree with your interpretations, that might be fun.
Yeah, that would be great. I would absolutely love that. And obviously we have gone way over
Yeah,
time.
this is
And
our
I hope
longest episode
this
by far.
and I knew that would happen because
So
this game there's just a lot of talk there's just a lot to talk to about.
I'm gonna ask you a spoiler question, and then let's say goodbye.
Okay, ask
Okay.
away.
Did you save Devitt or Wakefield?
I saved Wakefield.
I saved Devitt.
Why'd you save Devitt?
Because that was our whole goal the entire time. And Devitt specifically asked us early on in the game. He challenged us. He said, "Are you actually trying to save me, or are you
Hmm,
just looking to sate your curiosity?" And I wanted to prove, no, I'm actually trying to save you. You are my patient.
because you're
I
my
am an
patient.
ethical
Yeah.
doctor, and I am trying to save you. This is not a quest for ego.
Sure,
What
sure.
was your reason to save Wakefield?
Um, I was more in line with I thought that Devitt had to kind of live with his consequences of
Hmm.
what he has done. And I actually wanted to like keep them in there because if I believe that Devitt dies in the Vale. Um and so I guess I just didn't have a lot of sympathy for Devitt. I think that's where
Okay.
my mind went. And I wanted to protect like the greater good of the world from like this ever happening again versus
Right.
Devitt who I don't trust now. I actually don't trust anybody in the society at this point.
Right.
I don't think they have good intentions. So,
We know something about Devitt that we didn't tell the listeners. But if you're listening to this at like this is a mega spoiler, so I won't say it,
okay.
because
Yeah, let's not say it.
you didn't want us to, but
Yeah,
we do. Yeah.
I'm just reiterating that I did not feel that Devitt necessarily earned it, and I don't think anybody in
Mhm.
this society necessarily earned redemption. And so my whole thing was I wanted to protect more of the world from this supernatural than versus
Right.
saving somebody who I don't trust. And I know I
Right.
went off mission, and I know I didn't. I get that, I did to my credit, I did watch both endings, but I did choose to save Wakefield.
Okay. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah,
Um,
that was fun.
it's fun. This was a long one, so I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. We really like to do these deep dives. If you have a game that you would love to hear us do a deep dive, let us know. Um, we're not going to say yes to all of them, but it might be. But this game came from an audience suggestion, so
Yes,
please
always.
keep writing in, and write in if you have any other questions. The more interesting the question, the better. Uh, we're going to do another Q&A episode soon.
For sure.
What do you have to say, Roses, before we go?
I just want to say that I can talk a lot more about this game. We're not going to, all right?
Unless you
Maybe
guys write
sometime.
emails, and then we
Unless you
will.
guys write emails, yeah. But I just want to say this is probably one of the best psychological horror games I've played in a while,
Okay.
where it really didn't have any humor. It really stuck to what it was trying to do. And I felt that it was one of the most well-written games. Like you said, it got a little poetic, it got a little flourishy. It
Mhm.
does do that, but I'm coming at it from an artist perspective, and that's why I think in the end the writers know what they're doing, and they're coming across as so artistic that I fully believe that they have lore like down the up the waz in this game. But I super recommend this game, you guys. I really, really enjoyed it. It's really high up there now, and I think I want to do a review on it for the channel. And I'll just end it there.
All right. That's great. Yeah, and guys, again, email us mattandroses@gmail.com. Write reviews on all the platforms. Recommend this show to your friends, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week. You want to say
Absolutely.
our
Oh,
catchphrase,
ooh,
Roses?
do I get to say it? Ooh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it. Podcast is art, and art is suffer, and kneecap tattoos is suffer, and also art.